Ma'am, you lost? Bingo night's back in town. A young firefighter laughed, tossing his helmet onto the bench. Laughter rolled through the rescue station. Another rescuer chimed in. Careful on the ice, Grandma, don't slip a hip before the real medics get here. Dr. Evelyn Shaw stood quietly in the doorway, snow melting in her silver hair, her parka still dusted white from the storm outside. She didn't flinch, didn't fire back. She'd been mocked before, on bases, in field hospitals, even in war zones where men twice her age questioned whether a woman could keep up. She simply adjusted the strap on the weathered canvas bag slung over her shoulder. Inside were tools that didn't look like much: a bone saw, arterial clamps, tourniquets faded from sand and blood, a field stethoscope. The kit looked like it belonged in a museum, until you noticed the meticulous care, each piece wrapped in sterile cloth, each blade sharpened with military precision. The station leader, Captain Blake, stepped forward, voice polite but dismissive. Appreciate you showing up, Dr. Shaw, but we've got it handled. Plane went down 20 miles north in the tundra. Our team has drones, thermal scanners, medevac choppers. We'll call you if we need a consultation. Evelyn's steel-gray eyes didn't waver. They won't wait for your scanners. Someone's bleeding right now. Someone's suffocating under twisted metal. Every minute you waste is a life gone. A rookie paramedic, Kayla, snorted. With all due respect, ma'am, this isn't the Iraq desert. It's -20, and terrain like this eats people alive. We need endurance, not nostalgia. The room chuckled again. Evelyn Shaw said nothing more. She simply walked to the back, sat on a wooden bench, and laid her bag across her knees like a soldier setting down a rifle. When the emergency siren wailed minutes later, rattling the windows with its urgency, the joking stopped. A rescue plane carrying 6 had gone down hard on an ice shelf north of Talkeetna. Survivors confirmed. Multiple injuries. Sub-zero conditions. The team scrambled for gear, for tablets, for radios. Evelyn quietly zipped her coat, ready to move. They didn't know it yet, but before the storm was done, they'd learn the hard way: textbooks and gadgets fail. But experience? Experience bleeds, breathes, and saves. The snowstorm hit with a ferocity that swallowed sound. Wind clawed at the hangar doors as the rescue team strapped on their latest generation Avalanche beacons, GPS trackers, and insulated exosuits that made them look like astronauts about to step onto another planet. Evelyn stood apart, tugging on her old leather boots. They weren't flashy, but they had carried her through sandstorms, monsoons, and mountain passes where men died with all their high-tech gear still on their backs. Captain Blake scanned his roster on a digital tablet. We're down 3 men. Flu ripped through half the unit this week. His jaw tightened. He looked up, eyes narrowing on her. Fine. You can ride along. Observer only. Don't interfere unless asked. The word observer hung in the air like a slap. Evelyn only nodded. I'll be there. Kayla, the rookie paramedic who mocked her earlier, shook her head as she tightened her climbing harness. You'll regret this, Captain. Dragging her along is dead weight. She won't make it a mile in this storm. The team laughed, but their chuckles carried nervous edges this time. Storms like this didn't forgive arrogance. The helicopter roared to life, blades carving the snow into blinding spirals. Evelyn climbed aboard, squeezing into a corner seat, her canvas bag at her feet. The others ignored her, heads bent over glowing screens as they mapped routes and relayed coordinates to Denver Command. Through the window, Evelyn saw the storm stretch endlessly across the Alaskan tundra, a wall of white swallowing horizon and sky. She'd seen terrain like this before, only it wasn't snow but desert sand, whipping so thick you couldn't tell where the earth ended and the sky began. She remembered men stumbling through it, coughing blood, begging her to keep them alive until dawn. Piece of cake. Jake, the team's tech specialist, grinned as he checked his drone controls. We'll have eyes on the wreck in under an hour. Easiest rescue you'll ever see. Evelyn said nothing. She'd learned long ago that cocky men didn't need warnings, they needed failure to teach them. The helicopter cut through the storm for 2 grueling hours, bucking like a wild animal as gusts slammed into the fuselage. When they finally spotted smoke spiraling against the whiteout, the pilot shouted, "Crash site ahead!" Below, the wreckage sprawled across jagged ice like a broken toy. Metal torn open, fire hissing as snow smothered it, orange flames dying into black steam. Figures crawled weakly from the fuselage, some dragging others, some not moving at all. The helicopter touched down with a bone-shaking thud. The team surged forward with their gleaming gear and urgent voices. Evelyn stepped onto the ice last, her boots sinking slightly, her canvas bag steady at her side. And though they didn't know it yet, those 6 survivors weren't depending on their drones or monitors. They were depending on her. The crash site was a graveyard of twisted steel and broken ice. The rescue plane had sheared across the glacier, scattering cargo and bodies along a jagged scar in the snow. The wind howled through torn metal, carrying with it the faint cries of survivors. "Move, move, move!" Captain Blake barked. His team spread out with the precision of men drilled in theory but not tempered in blood. Drones lifted into the air, scanning the site with glowing thermal lenses. Beacons pinged steadily, coordinates flashing across their tablets. Kayla crouched beside a groaning pilot, her gloves fumbling with a digital pulse monitor that froze and reset in the cold. Jake cursed as his drone controls flickered, the signal dropping in and out under the storm's interference. "Damn it, it won't hold a lock!" he spat, smacking the console. Evelyn knelt quietly beside the wreckage, her eyes narrowing at the blood soaking into the snow from beneath a bent wing. She recognized the pattern, arterial bleeding, spreading fast. "Over here!" she called, her voice cutting through the wind. Kayla shot her a sharp look. "We've got it under control, ma'am." "Do you?" Evelyn asked, calm but firm. 2 men wrestled with a hydraulic spreader, trying to cut through the crumpled fuselage. Sparks spat into the snow, but the machine jammed in the cold. They swore and yanked at it, wasting precious time. Inside, a soldier pinned beneath twisted metal was turning pale, his breath shallow. Evelyn saw it from 20 feet away. The skin tint, the tremor in his lips. Internal bleeding. "Captain," she said, stepping closer. "He's crashing. If you don't stabilize him in the next 5 minutes, he'll be gone." Blake shot her a hard glance. "We'll handle it. Step back." The team clustered, frantically consulting manuals on their tablets. One suggested improvised heating blankets, another insisted on drilling an airway. Their voices overlapped, louder and more desperate. Evelyn simply stood with her bag in her hand, silent. She knew what came next, the panic spiral. She'd seen it countless times, green medics losing composure when blood ran too freely, when bodies stopped obeying textbooks. The soldier's eyes rolled back. His pulse slowed. Kayla's hands shook as she jabbed blindly for a vein, missing twice, then 3 times. Blood dribbled across the ice. I can't get it," she stammered. "Switch!" Blake ordered, shoving another medic forward. Evelyn finally set her bag down, her voice steady. "Give me 60 seconds." No one moved. The storm roared. The soldier's chest hitched once, then sagged. "Captain?" one of the rescuers shouted. "He's coding!" Blake's face hardened. He looked from his floundering team to Evelyn, standing firm with her bag. For the first time, doubt flickered in his eyes. And Evelyn Shaw knew her real work was about to begin. The young soldier's body convulsed once, then sagged limply against the metal wreckage. The chatter of the storm seemed to fade for a moment, leaving only the hollow rasp of his shallow breath. "Flatline incoming," Jake muttered, staring helplessly at the digital monitor strapped to his arm. I don't have a reading." Kayla's voice cracked. "Captain, we're losing him." Blake froze, torn between his pride and the undeniable truth unraveling in front of him. His men were floundering. Textbooks hadn't prepared them for this: the blood, the ice, the suffocating weight of a life slipping away second by second. And Evelyn had already seen enough. She stepped forward, dropping to her knees in the snow beside the soldier. "Open my bag." Nobody moved. Her voice cut sharper, the command tone of someone who had once directed trauma wards under incoming fire. "Now." Jake hesitated, then unlatched the faded canvas flap. Inside lay a collection of instruments older than he was, steel clamps dulled by decades of service, a stethoscope wrapped in cloth, for tubing coiled with soldierly neatness. Evelyn's gloved hands worked with unhurried precision. She pressed 2 fingers against the soldier's neck, feeling the faint flutter. "Still here," she murmured. "Not gone yet." She found his vein in seconds, sliding the 4-needle home with a surety that made Kayla's eyes widen. Clear fluid began dripping into the line. Next, she applied pressure to the abdomen, not random, not desperate, but at a precise angle that stopped the worst of the bleeding without cutting off circulation. "Kayla, palm flat. Not your fingers. Hold here. Don't move until I tell you." The rookie obeyed without thinking. Evelyn turned to Jake. "Cut that strip of fuselage fabric. We need a pressure wrap. Tight, steady, low." Jake moved before realizing he was taking orders from the woman he'd mocked. His drone controls dangled useless in the snow. Within 90 seconds, the soldier's pulse strengthened under Evelyn's touch. His skin, though pale, showed a flicker of color. His chest rose with deeper breaths. "Impossible," Kayla whispered, eyes locked on the steady rhythm of the 4-drip. Evelyn met her gaze. "Not impossible. Just practiced." Captain Blake exhaled heavily, rubbing a gloved hand down his jaw. His authority had been stripped without Evelyn ever raising her voice. His team, his bright, tech-savvy team, wasn't looking to him anymore. They were looking at her. For the first time since the storm began, silence fell, not the silence of despair, but of awe. The soldier opened his eyes faintly, lips trembling. Evelyn leaned close, her voice steady as stone. "Stay with me, son. You're not leaving this mountain today." And for the first time in years she felt it again, that old battlefield fire roaring back to life. The young soldier's pulse thudded strong against Evelyn's fingertips, proof that death could be pushed back if you knew where to press, when to act, and when to ignore the noise around you. She adjusted her glasses, her tone calm but carrying the weight of command. "Listen carefully. From this point on, you follow my directions. No arguments, no wasted time. Lives depend on it." Captain Blake bristled. "Hold on, this is still my operation." Evelyn didn't even look up. She clamped a bleeding artery with practiced hands and said flatly, "Then run your operation. And bury your men while you're at it." The words hit like a slap. The storm howled across the ice, filling the silence his protest left behind. His jaw clenched, but he didn't stop her. "Good," Evelyn said, shifting her focus back to the patient. "Kayla, keep steady pressure. Don't let your hand drift an inch. Jake, cut 2 poles from that wing strut. We'll need a stretcher. And you." She pointed to another rescuer fumbling with a thermal blanket. "Find dry fabric, not that useless foil. Foil traps ice. It'll kill him faster." They moved. Almost without realizing they moved. The wreck groaned in the wind, snow hissing across metal as Evelyn checked the next survivor, a woman with a fractured femur and a punctured lung. Her lips were tinged blue, every breath bubbling faintly through blood. "She won't last an hour unless we relieve the pressure," Evelyn said. She rifled her kit, pulling free a scalpel and a small plastic tube. Her fingers didn't tremble. "Captain, hold her shoulders still." Blake hesitated. What are you doing?" "Needle thoracostomy," Evelyn replied briskly. "Or, in your words, keeping her from suffocating in her own chest." Before he could argue, she slid the tube between the ribs. A hiss of air escaped, sharp and immediate. The woman gasped, chest rising fuller than before. "Pressure relieved," Evelyn said simply, as if she just adjusted a splint. Kayla gaped, her voice a whisper. "That wasn't in our training." "Of course it wasn't," Evelyn said, eyes flicking to her. "You can't teach instinct. You earn it the hard way. For the first time, the rookie didn't argue. She just nodded, hands steadying against the patient like a soldier taking her post. Blake looked down at the woman whose life had been seconds from ending and then at Evelyn, whose wrinkled hands worked faster and steadier than any of his recruits. His shoulders sagged under the weight of realization. He'd dismissed her, mocked her, tried to shove her aside. And now his entire team was looking at her like the only officer who mattered. The storm raged. Survivors still moaned in the snow. The mountain didn't care about pride. And Evelyn Shaw? She wasn't done yet. The storm clawed harder at the wreckage, snow piling into the broken fuselage. Evelyn knelt by the third survivor, a navigator with his leg twisted at an impossible angle, bone threatening to break skin. His teeth chattered as shock settled deep into him. "Compound fracture," she muttered, fingers probing gently. "We splint it before the bone tears through. Otherwise, infection takes him even if the cold doesn't." Kayla crouched beside her, still shaken but watching closely. "But our splints, they froze solid." Evelyn's eyes swept the wreck. A length of aluminum strut, canvas webbing, a piece of foam insulation. She nodded. "That'll do." In less than 2 minutes she had fashioned a rigid splint that braced the leg perfectly. The navigator gasped with relief, eyes fluttering open as blood flow steadied. Jake stared, mouth slightly open. "How did you?" "Improvisation," Evelyn cut in. "You don't wait for equipment that doesn't exist. You use what's around you." The words tugged at something deep in her memory. She was back in Iraq, the night heat choking with dust and diesel. A convoy hit by an IED. Screams echoing through smoke. She knelt beside a boy no older than 19, his arm hanging by threads. No surgical kit. No sterile room. Just a belt and a truck's broken antenna. She'd saved him with nothing but grit and the will not to let him die alone. "Doc?" Kayla's voice pulled her back to the snow. "You all right?" Evelyn blinked once, refocusing. "Fine. Keep pressure here. Don't let his circulation cut off." Another groan echoed from the wreckage. A man trapped half inside the fuselage, glass embedded in his chest. Blake tried to saw him free, but the blade skidded, useless in the cold. "Stop," Evelyn ordered, her voice like steel. "You'll slice into his lung." Blake bristled. "Then what's your brilliant idea?" She knelt, eyes scanning the jagged metal, then traced a path with her gloved hand. "Cut here. And here. You'll free him without tearing him open. Now." For a heartbeat, Blake stared at her, pride warring with reason. Then he gave a short nod and sawed where she directed. The metal shrieked, bent, and the man slumped free into the snow, alive but bleeding badly. Evelyn was already there with gauze and clamps. "You lead, we follow," Blake muttered, almost too quiet for anyone else to hear. Evelyn didn't acknowledge it. She just worked. Around her, the young team began moving with new rhythm. Orders snapped sharp, equipment flowed smoother, panic bled away into purpose. For the first time that night, Evelyn felt them shifting, not cocky trainees anymore, but soldiers under command. And the mountain, for all its fury, seemed to pause and listen. By the time the last of the trapped passengers was pulled free, the storm had turned into a living wall. Snow hammered sideways across the wreckage, burying anything not constantly brushed clear. Evelyn scanned the horizon. She knew this kind of storm, not from Alaska, but from Afghanistan's mountains, where whiteouts swept down like ghost armies. Visibility gone in minutes. Cold that froze a man's breath in his lungs. She called out, her voice steady and carrying. "We can't stay here. The fuselage is compromised, fuel's leaking under the snow. One spark, and this wreck becomes a pyre." Blake frowned, squinting against the wind. "We radioed for evac. Command says 2 hours until a chopper can punch through." Evelyn shook her head. "They'll never make it in this blizzard. You know it. We move now," Jake protested. "Move? With critical patients? Through this?" He gestured at the storm. "That's suicide." No, Evelyn said firmly. Leaving them here is suicide. I've carried men worse off than this across worse ground. We form a line, we anchor ropes, and we get to higher ground before this ice shelf gives. The word shelf drew nervous glances. Wait, what do you mean? Kayla asked. Evelyn jabbed a finger at the snow under their boots. Feel that? Hollow vibration. This whole section's ready to calve. One avalanche and we're gone. The rookies froze. They hadn't even noticed. Evelyn pulled a coil of rope from her bag, military grade, frayed but strong. Anchor points every 20 yards. No shouting, vibrations trigger slides. Move steady. Carry the stretchers low, keep weight distributed. Her tone was clipped, exact, the voice of someone who had done this before. Blake hesitated again, staring at her, then finally gave a short nod. You heard her. Ropes and stretchers, now. The team moved quickly, their expensive satellite radios useless in the storm, their thermal drones already grounded by ice. Evelyn's field-honed instincts were suddenly the only compass they had. Kayla jogged up beside her, rope coiled over her shoulder. How do you just know where the snow will break? Evelyn's eyes narrowed against the wind. Because I've seen the ground give way under me before. For a heartbeat, her mind flashed back. She was 24 again, racing through a canyon outside Kandahar as mortars shook the earth, men stumbling beside her, the ground collapsing in dust. She remembered pulling 2 soldiers out with nothing but a rope, the others swallowed by the earth before her eyes. She pushed the memory down and spoke flatly. You learn. Or you don't live long enough to. Kayla swallowed hard and nodded. They moved out across the ice, Evelyn at point, her rope cutting through the storm. For the first time, the young team wasn't leading her. They were following her footsteps. The storm swallowed them whole. Ropes snaked from rescuer to rescuer, stretchers slung low, every movement deliberate. Evelyn led the line, boots pressing careful tracks into the crusted snow. Each placement mattered. Step too hard, the layer fractured. Step too light, no footing. Stay exactly in my prints, she ordered, voice cutting clean through the wind. Not near them. Not beside. On them. Behind her, Kayla adjusted her rope, guiding the stretcher with the fractured leg navigator. She was steady, determined. But 2 soldiers back, Jake slipped, his boots sliding off Evelyn's trail. The snow groaned. A deep, unsettling sound rolled beneath them like a drumbeat. Hold! Evelyn snapped, raising her hand. Everyone froze. The mountain listened. Evelyn backtracked, crouching low. She brushed the snow with her glove, reading the slope's tension like a surgeon reading a pulse. Then, carefully, she stomped her heel down to compress the fracture before it spread. The groaning ceased. Her eyes met Jake's, hard as steel. You move sloppy again, and the mountain buries us all. Understood? Jake swallowed. Understood. They pressed on. Minutes bled into hours. Visibility shrank to a tunnel of snow and rope. Evelyn's breath crystallized against her scarf, but her voice never wavered. Anchor. Check tension. Keep moving. Another stumble. This time Kayla's mitten snagged on the stretcher frame, nearly jolting the patient off balance. Evelyn was there in a flash, steadying the load. Breathe, Evelyn murmured. Panic wastes strength. Focus on the next step, nothing else. Kayla nodded, cheeks pale, but steadier after Evelyn's hand on hers. By the time they reached a jagged outcrop of rock, a rare island of solidity in the sea of white, the team collapsed in exhaustion. They laid the stretchers in a shallow lee, bodies curled against the wind. Blake crouched beside Evelyn, his voice low. They're holding because of you. Evelyn shook her head. They're holding because they listen. Keep them listening. A moan rose from one of the survivors. The woman with the chest wound struggled, blood frothing faintly at her lips. Evelyn was there instantly, adjusting the tube, rewrapping gauze with hands that didn't shake. She glanced up at Blake. We can rest them. We can't rest the dying. The captain met her gaze. No sarcasm. No pride. just quiet respect. But above them, snowflakes swirled in patterns Evelyn didn't like. The wind shifted. Somewhere far across the slope, a low thunder rumbled. The mountain had heard them. And it was not done yet. The team had just left the rock outcrop behind when the mountain answered. It started as a crack, sharp, like a rifle shot. Then another. Then the deep, rolling boom that turned blood cold. Down! Evelyn barked. The slope above them split. A sheet of snow peeled free, rumbling like thunder made solid. White poured down the mountain in a churning wall. Anchor! Dig in! She shouted, slamming her ice axe into the slope and wrapping the rope around her wrist. The line snapped taut as the avalanche roared closer. The rookies froze, eyes wide with terror. Kayla clung to the stretcher straps, sobbing prayers under her breath. Jake fumbled with his carabiner, hands shaking too violently to clip in. Evelyn lunged. With one swift move, she jammed Jake's rope through the anchor point and locked it, shoving him flat. Face down! Hold your breath when it hits, she yelled. Blake's voice cut through the storm. Brace! Hold the line! And then it came, snow, ice, and wind slamming into them with the force of a freight train. Evelyn's world went white. The weight crushed her chest, shoving her face into the snowpack. She felt the rope strain, felt bodies yanked behind her as the mountain tried to tear them loose. Her lungs burned. Her grip screamed. But she held. Seconds stretched into eternity. Then, as suddenly as it began, the fury passed. The avalanche thundered downslope, leaving only a trembling silence in its wake. Evelyn coughed, spitting ice, and forced herself upright. Sound off! One by one, voices answered. Hoarse, shaking, but alive. Then Kayla's scream cut through the night. The stretcher! Blake's line snapped. Evelyn's head whipped around. The final stretcher, carrying the chest-wound woman, was sliding downslope, tether frayed, dangling over a drop-off. Blake hung onto the frame with both hands, boots skidding on the ice, seconds from being dragged over the edge. Evelyn didn't hesitate. She threw herself forward, rope snapping tight across her waist. Her gloved hands shot out, locking onto Blake's harness just as his boots lost purchase. The three of them, Evelyn, Blake, and the wounded woman, teetered at the edge of the abyss, the mountains still groaning beneath them. Hold! Evelyn snarled through gritted teeth. The line creaked. The cliff yawned below. And the night was far from done. Snow crumbled beneath Evelyn's boots, dropping away into blackness. The rope bit deep into her waist as she anchored herself against the pull. Blake dangled over the lip, arms locked around the stretcher frame where the wounded woman gasped weakly, half-conscious. Cut the load! Jake shouted from above, panic high in his voice. She's gone! We'll all go if you don't! Shut your mouth! Evelyn snapped. Her biceps screamed as she dug in, boots scraping for friction. Nobody dies unless I say so! The wind howled, tugging at them like invisible hands. Blake's face twisted with strain. I can't hold her. Yes, you can, Evelyn growled. Her eyes burned into his. Because I am holding you. Now lock your harness into mine. With trembling hands, Blake fumbled at his carabiner, clipping into her line. Evelyn shifted, redistributing the weight, her legs braced wide. It wasn't enough. The stretcher still dragged them closer to the abyss, metal scraping on ice. Kayla! Evelyn barked. Crawl forward. Take the patient's straps. Now. Kayla's eyes widened. I'll fall. You won't. Evelyn cut her off, her voice like steel. Because I'm not letting go. Move. Something in the absolute certainty of her tone forced Kayla into motion. She crawled forward, snow blasting her face, fingers clawing at the stretcher straps. Inch by inch, she hauled them back. The slope groaned again. Ice cracked beneath Evelyn's knees. She knew the shelf could collapse at any second. Now, all together! She roared. Pull! Every muscle in her body fired at once. Blake heaved, Kayla strained, Evelyn anchored with the raw fury of survival. For a moment, it felt like the mountain itself was laughing, refusing to give up its prey. Then, suddenly, the stretcher lurched upward, sliding free of the edge. The weight lifted, sending Evelyn crashing back onto the snow, gasping for air. For a long heartbeat, the only sound was the storm. Then Kayla let out a sobbing laugh, clutching the stretcher like it was holy. Blake collapsed beside Evelyn, chest heaving. He looked at her as if seeing her for the first time. You don't let go, do you?" Evelyn wiped the ice from her lashes, voice rough but steady. "Not until the last breath." But inside, her hands still trembled. Because for a single, merciless second, she had thought of cutting the straps. And she knew the mountain would demand more before the night was through. By dawn, the storm had burned itself out, leaving the slopes scarred and glittering under a pale sky. The team huddled in the lee of an ice shelf, their breaths steaming in the brittle air. The stretchers lay lined up, survivors still clinging to life, thanks to Evelyn's relentless hands. Kayla sat slumped against her pack, eyes red but shining. Jake, who hadn't spoken since the avalanche, kept glancing at Evelyn like a schoolboy watching a legend walk past. Blake moved stiffly, one arm strapped from a rope-burn gash. He crouched beside Evelyn as she checked the chest wound patient, her gloves soaked in dried blood. "Helicopters will be here within the hour," he said quietly. "Beacons finally cutting through." Evelyn didn't look up. "Good. They'll need plasma, airway support, and heated IVs the second they touch down. Tell them." Blake hesitated, then nodded. "Already did." For a moment, the only sound was the patient's ragged breathing. Then Blake cleared his throat. "You saved me out there," he said. "Saved all of us." Evelyn cinched the last bandage, her face unreadable. "That was the job." "No." His voice carried weight this time. "That was more than the job. You held when the rest of us broke." Finally, she met his eyes. For the first time since the climb began, there was no sarcasm, no dismissal, only respect. "I misjudged you," Blake admitted. "Thought you were just a medic. Turns out, you're the spine that kept this whole line alive." Evelyn gave a small, tired smile. "Funny thing about spines. You only notice them when they break." The helicopters appeared as specks on the horizon, rotors chopping the thin mountain air. The rookies scrambled to ready the stretchers, moving with new discipline, every command Evelyn had drilled into them etched deep now by survival. As the first bird flared for landing, Blake straightened and gestured toward her. "You're leading them in," he said simply. Evelyn adjusted her scarf, lifted her hand, and signaled the rookies into formation. They moved without hesitation, eyes locked on her. The mountain had tested them. It had tried to bury them. And because of her, they were still standing. For Evelyn Cross, that was enough.